Most women have no idea they're starving the man they love. Not of food, not of time, not even of attention. Of touch. The right kind, in the right place, at the right moment. And here's what nobody tells you. Men don't talk about this. They won't bring it up at dinner. They won't text you about it at midnight. They won't even be able to fully explain it if you ask them directly. But deep inside, in that quiet place where men don't often go, there is a hunger. A hunger for a specific kind of physical connection that most relationships, even good ones, never, ever satisfy. If you've ever felt like your man is there, but not quite present, if you've ever sensed a distance between you that you can't explain, a wall you can't seem to reach through, if you've given everything you have and still wondered why it doesn't feel like enough, this video is going to change something for you today. Because the secret to a man's emotional core, the fastest, most direct path to his trust, his softness, his devotion, is not what you say to him. It's where you touch him. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly 4 places, physical and emotional, where a man secretly, desperately longs to be touched. And once you understand them, the dynamic in your relationship will never be the same again. Here's what's really happening in most relationships right now. You've been trying. You know you've been trying. You've been showing up, putting in the effort, giving your love the best way you know how. Maybe you've been more affectionate, more patient, more available, and still something doesn't feel complete. And the frustrating part is, he might seem fine on the surface. He laughs with you, he's kind, he shows up. But there's a version of him you feel like you've never quite reached. The deeper version. The one that lets his guard fully down. The one that looks at you like you're the only thing in the world that makes sense. You've seen it, maybe in flashes. A moment in bed where he just held you tighter than usual. A Sunday morning where he was softer, warmer, more himself. And you thought, that's him. That's who I want. And then, as quickly as it came, he went back behind the glass. Here's what most relationship advice gets completely wrong. It treats men like they need to be cracked open, like emotional intimacy is something you have to extract from them through the right conversation, the right question, the right emotional technique. But men aren't locked boxes that need to be pried open with the right words. They're human beings who respond profoundly to physical presence, to touch, to the quiet, wordless language of a hand placed in exactly the right spot at exactly the right moment. The problem isn't that your man doesn't want to be close to you. The problem is that nobody ever taught you where his emotional doors actually are. Nobody handed you the map. Until right now. The place where his armor comes off. Let's start here, because this is the one most people walk right past every single day without realizing what they're missing. The back of a man's neck. Not a rough grab, not a playful shove. I'm talking about a slow, deliberate, intentional touch. Your fingertips resting lightly at the base of his hairline, or your palm, warm and steady, placed at the back of his neck while he drives, while he talks, while you're watching a film on the sofa. Here's why this matters more than you realize. From the time he was a little boy, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, A man was taught to hold tension in his body, to square his shoulders, to keep his chin up and his chest out, to project strength at all times. And over the years, that tension found its permanent home in one place: the back of his neck and the tops of his shoulders. It's where every suppressed emotion, every unspoken worry, every moment of stress gets quietly stored. When you touch him there, slowly, gently, intentionally, you are reaching into the place where he keeps everything he never says out loud. Think about that for a second. You're not just touching skin, you're touching history. You're touching the 30 years of tension that built up in a man who was told to be strong, to handle it, to keep going. And for one moment, your moment, you're telling him, you're safe here. You can let it go. Imagine it's a Tuesday evening. He's come home from work and something is off. You can feel it. He's quieter than usual. He says, "I'm fine," when you ask, but his eyes are somewhere else entirely. You could push for the conversation. You could ask what's wrong again. Or you could simply walk up behind him while he's standing at the kitchen counter and without a word, place your hand softly at the back of his neck. Watch what happens to his shoulders. Watch them fall. Watch his breathing slow. Watch something in him, that tight, wound up something, begin to release. You haven't said a single word, and you've communicated more than a 2-hour conversation ever could. Men don't always need you to understand what they're feeling. Sometimes they just need to feel that you're there. But here's where it gets interesting, because the next place is one that most women get completely backwards. The part of him that does everything and feels nothing. When was the last time you actually paid attention to his hands? Not held his hand in passing, not interlocked fingers absent-mindedly while walking. I mean paid attention. Ran your thumb across his palm, traced the lines there, held both his hands in yours and just looked at them like they mattered, like he mattered. Men's hands are one of the most emotionally charged and completely overlooked parts of the male body. Think about what those hands do every single day. They carry things, fix things, build things, type and type and type and type. They shake hands with bosses. They navigate the world in 100 practical, task-oriented ways. And almost nobody ever touches them with gentleness, with reverence, with care. There's a psychological concept that some researchers call touch starvation, and it disproportionately affects men. Because from early adolescence, the casual, nurturing touch that women give and receive freely with their friends becomes culturally off limits for most men. No more hugs that linger, no more resting your head on a friend's shoulder. The only sanctioned touch becomes competitive. A punch on the arm, a rough clap on the back. And over years and decades, men become profoundly, quietly starved for gentle human contact. His hands are the front line of that starvation. You're sitting across from him at a restaurant. Maybe the conversation has been light, normal, ordinary, and then you reach across the table and you take his hands in yours, both of them. You turn them over, you run your fingertips across his palm slowly, like you're reading something written there. You don't say anything dramatic. Maybe you say, "You have incredible hands." Maybe you say nothing at all. I promise you, something will change in his eyes. Something that looked slightly distracted will suddenly become completely present. Because in that moment, you weren't just touching his hands. You were touching his worth, his sense of being seen, his deep, unspoken need to be cared for. Not because he provides something, not because he fixed something, not because he performed well, but simply because he exists, because he's yours. And that right there is the kind of moment men carry with them for years. The man who feels safe being soft with you will never stop coming back to you. Now, this next one might genuinely surprise you because it's not where you think it is, the place he's never let anyone touch before. I want you to stop for a second and think about all the relationships you've been in. All the moments of closeness, of intimacy, of connection. Now I want you to ask yourself, how often did any of that touch feel sacred? Not passionate, not exciting, not even loving in the conventional sense. I mean sacred. Like something ancient and true was being acknowledged. That's what happens when you place your hand flat against a man's chest, right over his heart, and you just leave it there. Not for a second, not as a precursor to something else, just there, present, still. Most women never do this intentionally. They might rest their head on his chest, which is wonderful, but there is something categorically different about placing your open palm on his chest, looking at him, and just being still with him. It requires a kind of courage, actually. It's almost uncomfortably intimate, which is exactly why it's so powerful. Here's what's happening beneath your hand when you do this. His nervous system, which has been running in fight or flight mode for most of his waking life, begins to downregulate. His heart rate slows. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, begins to flood his bloodstream. And something at a much deeper level, something almost primal, is activated. The sense that he is known. That someone has reached past the performance, past the competence, past all the armor, and is touching the actual him. Men build elaborate psychological structures to protect their hearts. Not because they're cold, but because they learned early that vulnerability has a cost. That openness leads to pain. That the chest, the emotional core, is the most dangerous place to let someone near. When you touch him there and he lets you, that is not a small thing. That is an act of immense trust. And when you do it first, when you initiate it, you are giving him a gift that most men have never received. It's late. You've had a long day, both of you. You're lying in bed in the dark, not talking, just existing in the same space. And instead of reaching for your phone, instead of drifting away into your own world, you roll toward him. You place your hand open, flat, warm, right over the left side of his chest. You don't squeeze, you don't pat, you just rest it there. And you feel his heartbeat. and he feels yours through your hand. And something between you, something that might have been thinning, something that busyness and stress and daily life had been quietly eroding, knits itself back together. That's not nothing. That's everything. There is something he's never going to say to you out loud, not because he doesn't feel it, but because he doesn't have the language for it. And what he's never going to say is this: sometimes I just need you to remind me that I have a heart. Because the world spends a great deal of effort telling men to suppress it. And you, with one hand in one moment, can undo all of that. The most powerful thing you can do for a man is touch the part of him the world told him to hide. And if you think that was powerful, stay with me, because what I'm about to share last is the one that creates the deepest, longest lasting emotional bond. The touch that changes everything. Nobody touches a grown man's face. Think about that for a moment. When you were a child, someone, a parent, a grandparent, someone who loved you, probably cupped your face in their hands, and it felt safe. It felt like love without conditions. It felt like for one moment you were the most important thing in the world. And then you grew up, and that stopped. For women, some version of that touch continues. Friends, sisters, mothers. There are still moments of that face-touching, face-holding warmth in your life. But for men, by the time they're teenagers, it's essentially over. The world stops touching their face. And that specific form of tenderness, gentle, deliberate, face-to-face, becomes almost exclusively available through romantic love. Which means you have access to something most of the world has withheld from him for 20, 30, maybe 40 years. There are a few ways to do this, and each one communicates something slightly different. There's the single hand on his cheek, your palm against his face while you look at each other, maybe after a moment of conflict, maybe in the middle of a quiet evening. There's both hands framing his face, pulling him gently toward you, forehead to forehead. There's the thumb running softly across his jaw, his cheekbone. And there is the simplest one of all, brushing his hair out of his face, gently, slowly, like he's precious. Because here's what that touch says, and men feel this even when they can't articulate it. It says, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not intimidated by your strength or your complexity. I choose to be close to you. I choose to see your face. And you are safe being fully human in front of me. That is a message that cuts straight through every wall he has ever built. You've just been through something hard together. Maybe a disagreement that got heated and then resolved. Maybe just a week that wore you both down. And he's sitting there, a little distant still, a little guarded, the way people are when they're not quite sure the storm is over. And instead of waiting for him to reach for you, you reach for him. You take his face in both your hands, gently, and you just look at him. You don't rush to fill the silence. You don't say something clever or fix the mood with humor. You just look at him. And you smile. Small and real and meant. He will not have words for what that does to him. But I can tell you what it does. It breaks the last bit of armor. It reaches the part of him that has been quietly waiting through all the strength and the performance and the holding it together for someone to just see him. Not the version of him that handles things, the version that feels things. And when a man feels that truly, physically, undeniably felt in his own face, something locks into place. You stop being the person he loves and become the person he needs. The person whose presence makes him feel most like himself. The person he will choose again and again and again, not out of obligation or habit, but out of something deeper. Something that doesn't have a name, but that he'll recognize every single time you touch his face. The woman who makes a man feel truly seen becomes irreplaceable. Not because she found the right words, but because she had the courage to truly look. So let's bring this home. We started this conversation talking about distance, about that frustrating, aching feeling of being close to someone and still somehow not close enough, of giving love and not quite reaching him, of sensing that there's a deeper version of him you haven't fully unlocked. And here's what I want you to understand now at the end of this. The distance was never about a lack of love. It was never about not being good enough or not being the right person or not trying hard enough. The distance existed because nobody gave you the map. Nobody sat you down and said, here, this is where he keeps his softness. This is where the armor is thinnest. This is where a single touch placed with intention and love can reach the part of him that words never can. The back of his neck, where decades of unspoken stress live. His hands that do everything and are gently touched by almost no one. His chest over his heart, the most guarded real estate in his entire life. His face, the place that hasn't been held with pure tenderness since he was a child. These are not manipulation tactics. They are not tricks. They are invitations. Invitations for him to be fully human with you. And every time you offer one, with warmth, with presence, with genuine love, you are building something between you that is almost impossible to break. Because here is the truth that sits underneath all four of these points. The truth that I want you to carry with you after you close this video. Men are not emotionally unavailable. They are emotionally untouched. There is a difference. One is a limitation. The other is an opportunity. And that opportunity is yours. The relationship you want, the depth, the presence, the warmth, the man who looks at you like you're home, it doesn't come from the perfect conversation. It comes from the perfect moment. A hand at the back of his neck on a hard Tuesday. Both palms on his face after a long week. Your hand over his heart in the dark. Those moments compounded over time don't just improve a relationship, they define it. They become the story you both tell, even if neither of you can quite explain it in words, about why this, why us, why her. You have more power than you know, not the power to control or to fix or to change, the power to reach him, the power to touch the version of him that the world never gets to see. Use it. This is your moment. Don't waste it. If this spoke to something real in you, if you felt this in your chest while you were watching, then do one thing right now. Not tomorrow, right now. Think of the man in your life and choose one of these 4 touches to offer him today. That's it. One touch with intention, with love, and watch what comes back to you. And if you want to go even deeper, if you want to understand not just how to touch his heart, but how to keep it, watch my next video on the 5 things men need to feel genuinely loved. It's the perfect companion to everything we just covered together. Subscribe if you haven't already, because this community is built for women who want real love, real depth, and real connection. Not surface level advice, but the kind of truth that actually changes things. I'll see you in the next one.